I see my old thumbnail down there.
Oh
The
yeah.
scar has improved greatly. At least you can like hardly see it anymore.
Yeah, that was my laziness. I took the picture from the interview we did because I was like, I can't sue myself for stealing a picture, so I'm gonna use my picture. So,
Sounds good. Yeah.
all right. Well, hello everybody. I am lucky enough to be joined by Rich Whitehouse himself, and we are gonna go in and check out the Big Pimu emulator. He sent me a newer build, and I got some games here, and we're just gonna see what we could do and hang out. And I just realized you're kind of cut off here. Let me fix that. And
Am I visible?
yeah, you are. There we go. All right.
In my view, I'm over my own face, so I can't.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. All right. So installation isn't really installation, right? We just extract it to the desktop.
Yeah, yeah.
Love it.
As it should be with all programs.
I could not agree more. I went on a whole rant the other day about why I use Media Player Classic Home Cinema and a bunch of other stuff that you could just load and not worry about installing.
Yep.
All right, so the resolution of the monitor I'm on is 1280 or 1920 by 1200. So basically, I've only cut off the let's see if I could. I only cut off, yeah, basically the start menu. Maybe a hair more than that. So there might be a few pixels of the bottom cut out, but I don't think we're gonna have to worry about that. So here we go. First use. I'm just gonna open it up and then. Nice. Okay. Whoa, that's very loud. All right. So from here, should I just put it in full screen mode?
Yeah, probably. It seems like there's a good chunk off the bottom from my view. I don't know if this is what everybody sees.
Yeah,
Like, I'm just looking at the Discord stream.
mine too. I don't know what
Um,
resolution it's being set to, but how do I make it full screen?
like Alt Enter should do it, I guess.
Shit. No, my screen just went blank.
Did that just kill it?
So, you know what's funny is I have a 2 monitor setup right now, and I set this one to main because whenever I had a secondary monitor, all of the emulation I would use would always default to the main, and this one just went to the other. That's pretty funny.
I wonder if it's like you've got, because it shares config files between builds. I wonder if it's like hitting the old display or something.
Oh, that could be. That could be.
But
All right.
if you go in there and go to the video settings, it'll allow you to actually choose an explicit monitor.
Does this have for audio? Could I turn the audio down for this?
Yeah, that's in the audio menu.
All right, let me. There we go. There we go.
So like I don't know, probably like negative 40 is a good start. You can see if it's too quiet for you from there.
All right, cool. And everybody in the chat, welcome. Thank you very much for joining, and let us know how our audio levels are. Okay. So audio is still at that. We'll go video. All right. So should I select the native resolution of this monitor or go 1920 by 1080 so I don't even have to?
Yeah, I mean whatever you want, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's better because that'll also fit nicely in this window. I think, mostly. Yeah, what you guys see cut off right now is barely barely any and more or less than what's on for me. So this is gonna work fine.
Yeah, most Jaguar games are like a little bit. They don't render the whole NTSC display range anyway, so you're probably gonna have some black area for most of them anyway.
Yeah. So getting started, should I reset this all if it's carrying over my settings? Let me reset these to defaults because who knows what I was messing around with the last time I used this. Like I had a lot of fun just messing with ridiculous stuff, to be honest with you. All right. Yep. 1920 by 1080. Oh, come on.
And mind you, that's only going to reset video settings. So if you really want to fully reset everything, there's a factory default in the information. You'll have to redo your audio volume change, though.
I think that's worth doing.
All right.
Because really, who knows what the hell I did with the thing. Alright. Audio is still good. Video. Window. Resolution. All right. So, other than loading it up and setting your resolution, what are the other settings that you would want people to mess with when they first opened it up?
I mean, like it really depends on your personal preferences. I've tried to make the defaults pretty good for somebody who just like wants to go in there and experience kind of, the Jaguar as the Jaguar is. Um,
All
but of
right.
course, like if you want to get into more advanced stuff, you can like make the blitter free. That'll speed up a lot of games. But that starts getting into territory where that's going to break some games. It'll work fine with most games, but you know,
Okay. It also seems to be working with a USB controller that I have plugged in. Um,
yeah,
so I don't really need to do anything else, I guess.
yeah.
Oh, no, not exit, you moron. All right. Here we go.
This this build does have a new feature called the pad wheel.
Okay.
So like basically that's a new bind in the input menu if you want to mess around with that. And instead of having to do like the default binds, I think are like left trigger plus a bunch of different face buttons on an Xbox controller to kind of like map the Jaguar numpad out to an Xbox controller, which is not it's not a real super intuitive way to do that. Um, but this new pad wheel feature is basically like you can hold this button and a little display will come up, and you can either toggle the numpad buttons or push them from the pad wheel and stuff like that.
All right. Well, let's try this gem, Atari carts.
Yeah.
Um, all right, and we'll see once the game starts, and we could have an idea of the music. We can go from there.
Yeah.
This was a one-player game only, right?
I think so. Maybe no, I think it actually does have two-player mode.
Very, very shameless and poor ripoff of Super Mario Kart. Kind of
Yep.
funny. Am I stuck?
Yeah, this game is like that little like crater you're on right there is it's colliding with you, so you have to like back up. It's like
Wow.
there's some really tedious stuff in this game like that. And they seem to do it intentionally. Like some tracks use like actual like crater type obstacles and stuff in the middle of the track, and it's really feels really bad when you run into one because you gotta like manually back out. And my other peeve with this game is just the power ups. Like they're not very good power ups. Like it's not
Yeah.
not like
I mean, I
like
usually
this.
fire this up because you can get right into the game and I could mess with some settings, but I rarely
Yeah.
actually play it for all the reasons.
This is one of the ones where like I occasionally ponder it in my mind, like, wouldn't it be fun to do a script for this that basically like adds power ups and like turns it into a better Mario Kart clone?
Right, right. So I guess since you just mentioned scripts, why don't we do that one next? Didn't you do a script for Checkered Flag or something?
Yeah. That was good. Some pretty radical enhancements.
All right.
So to enable the script here, you got to go back out to the menu and then go down to script modules near the bottom there and click on that checkered flag one. It's gonna kick you out of the game. Let's go ahead and say okay and reload it. Okay. And by default, it's going to be rendering native resolution and everything. And optionally, if you've got your analog, controller hooked up, which it sounds like you do, you should be able to just use that to steer.
Oh, okay.
So it should have given you good analog binds by default, unless something went wrong there. Looks like you're still using the D-pad. Is the
Uh,
analog working for you?
I am using the analog stick, but
Oh, you are.
yeah,
Okay.
but it could just be this controller too. This looks
Oh,
ridiculously good.
actually,
So it's being
yeah.
rendered in a higher resolution right now.
Yep. It's basically matching to, native resolution for the proportion of the screen for whatever your window size is. So something close to 1080p here. But there are
Oh,
some more options as well. Like by default, it doesn't uncap the frame rates. So you can, if you go into the script settings, you can like tick it up and make it run at 30 hertz, which is
oh,
usually what I do.
we have got to try that. Yeah. Script settings.
So uncapped frame rates, and you can set it to either 30 or 60. 60 feels nice, but it's got a lot of like kind of wonkiness because the game definitely is not made to run at 60.
Well, let's just try it. I mean, we're having some fun here. So, and just
Yeah,
escape
yeah,
will send me back to the game.
yeah. Just like exit out all the way out of the menu there. You can definitely see the smoothness.
Yeah, yeah, it's tweaking out a little bit. It's still
Oh,
kind
is
of
it not
weird.
steering right?
Yeah, so let me set it back.
Oh, that's weird. Didn't think it would break like that, but gonna have to take another look at that one.
Hey, so anybody in the chat who wants to see stuff, please call it out. Neil said, "How well does Rayman play on this?" I could definitely check that one out next. But
Yeah.
yeah, anything you all want to see, I'm very, very lucky that I get to sit here with Rich and get all of the cool features live while we're testing here. I should
I do
probably
not know what is
reset the
breaking
game
there.
though. Yeah, I should probably system. I could just reset, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's try that again. All right, it's working ish, I think.
Yeah, the weird thing is that it should, like the way that it's turning the car there, I wonder if somehow your controller is bound to have the analog associated with the D-pad or something,
It could
because it
be.
shouldn't actually be doing that turning thing like that.
It's still
'Cause,
crazy to
yeah,
see this running at 30 frames a second. What do you think it ran at before? Like 15?
like when it's actually bound by Jaguar performance, it's usually, I'd say maybe mustering like 10, sometimes 15, something like that. But yeah, I think you must have like, because it basically the digital steering is totally busted when you up the frame rate. Because I'm adding analog steering anyway. I didn't bother to fix that up, but it looks like somehow your analog stick is controlling the the digital inputs. So like, if you don't mind, exit out and go to back to the input menu and input device one, actually input device two. Set that to analog, and then go down to set bindings and scroll all the way down to the analog inputs. It's going to be below all the usual Jaguar buttons here. And analog left, go ahead and hit add on that, and then just, move your analog stick left. Oh yeah, that's the D-pad. All right, there's something funky going on there.
It's one of these Logitech ones. Let's see. Okay, okay, okay.
That's interesting.
How do I?
Okay,
Oh wait, how do I clear that?
yeah, hit reset or remove on the left there.
Oh, there it is. I just have to go left. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Add.
Uh, yeah, that messed that up. It seems like it thinks you're pushing the stick in while pushing it to the left there.
Okay, maybe I was
That
pushing it
one
in.
worked.
Who knows?
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, that one was correct. Yeah, okay. It should be correct now.
No, no, back off. Go. Okay. So that's
All right. That should be that. Now let's also back up and check out input device one. You can just
okay.
hit back and get out of this menu here.
Okay.
Back in there, input device one. And let's set bindings. Oh wait, you don't want to do analog on this one.
Oh,
'Cause it gets a little tricky because this is the actual device type that the Jaguar sees. And
okay.
a lot of games, like there were actual analog controllers for the thing, and a lot of games will freak out if those bits are set because they're just not expecting it. But scroll all the way down to the analogs here, and let's make sure that at least it looks right. Yeah, it seems correct.
Okay, so just back out
And
into the game.
yeah, it did seem like your controller's got something weird going on, like based on the fact that it thought it was the D-pad the first time, like it's controlling the D-pad and the analog simultaneously.
Oh, but
This
no, this
looks
is actually
incorrect.
yeah, no, totally, and it
Yeah,
is
okay.
amazing in 60 frames per second like this. That is very funny. Yeah, it's playing fine.
Cool.
Well, fine for checkered flag, but so let me set it back to 30 and see if that's more doable. And would I have to restart the game after doing this, or just
Oh, it should just work.
yeah? No, it's playing. Seems to be playing a little better.
Yeah.
This is crazy to see it rendered like this. I feel like when I was a kid reading the magazines, this is what Atari wanted us to think it looked like, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I put a
Yeah.
video on my Twitter and Blue Sky accounts not too long ago. This thing running like this on the new iOS port and just controlling it with the gyroscope, and
That's
it feels pretty
amazing.
damn good. Yeah, like that. It was surprisingly satisfying to like the first time I got that going. I'm like, oh yeah, this actually feels like this game was made to be played like this.
That is very cool. Let me check the chat real quick. All right, I think I'm gonna try. Rayman was called out. Do you have a script for that, or just should just try the game?
Uh, I haven't done anything for that one. I mean, it runs pretty flawlessly as far as I know.
The only thing
And
I'd like to see, maybe let me try 1200p in full screen and see if that's gonna just look better for the stream.
all right.
Video full screen. Am I on the right screen at least? I hope so. Yes. Yes. Okay.
This is
And
going to be 1080p full screen. But you can also, if you wanted to, just match your desktop resolution. Borderless window will do that regardless. But pretty much same difference between that and full screen at this resolution.
all right, this monitor doesn't have HDR, so I won't be able to use that anyway. Screen scaling integer multiple. That's exactly what
Yeah,
we would want. And all right, I think we're
yeah. If you did have HDR, I would put money on that breaking the stream.
oh yeah.
I I would be shocked if whatever desktop encoder didn't flip out and like get the color ranges totally wrong.
All right, let's try Rayman. See what we got. Hey, Belmont, what's up? Oh, wrong button. Uh,
I guess I should open this thing and look at the chat over here.
so I gotta ask, do you know about the running joke of me saying your name wrong every time I talk about you on the podcast? Because I don't think I ever told you.
No, I don't. Rich Whitehouse? Is that-
Oh, I called you rich white guy, big dick Whitehouse. I mean, there was a lot. There was like I started running out of. I think I asked you your middle name once because I was running out of shit to call you. But somebody was
Very
like, "Do you
nice.
think he's gonna get mad?" And I was like, "I'm gonna go with no. I'm gonna go with he's
I'm
definitely not
curious.
gonna be upset with me for that. No."
How dare you call me Big Dick, you son
Right,
of a bitch.
right, right. Exactly. Yeah. Oh my God, this looks beautiful. Wow. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
this game has one of those art styles as well where usually, I don't mess around with video filters and stuff, but this one doesn't look too bad if you use some of those upscaling filters because it's kind of got that art style that's meant for solid colors and sharp lines.
Like what? What would you suggest?
Let's take a look at the screen effect list there. And so some of these have been like directly converted from RetroArch shaders, like XBR level 3 multipass, I think is a pretty decent one for these purposes.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
kind of smeary
like
and weird, but I like it.
yeah,
I don't know if I
yeah,
would
like
use that.
I wouldn't generally play with it, but I think like this game's art style is one of the few things that kind of complements this sort of effect well. But again, like I don't know, I'm not a big fan of it generally, but if you're gonna use it, this is probably one of the games to use it.
Yeah, let's try level 2 and see if that's a little less. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's kind of neat. Hey, Barone, thank you so much for the super chat. Very, very nice of you. Yep, always great to have him on and to hear from him. And hey, what's up, Chris? Good to see you. All right, let's try some more of these and see what we got. Warping.
Yeah, it's just a simple monitor curvature effect. And shader toy, this is basically like it's a copy pasted, like super exaggerated CRT shader from shader toy. But
Yeah,
basically, the feature of that one is you can actually go into the text file and copy paste shaders from shader toy, and it'll just apply it to the screen for you.
that's kind of funny.
Uh, this is basically just a joke shader demonstrating some functionality. Um, Pretty much nobody will get it, but if you ever saw those Liz Taylor White Diamonds commercials in like the 80s and 90s, I think.
Oh,
This is another one that's converted straight from RetroArch, the
yeah,
basic CRT shader.
this one isn't bad.
Yeah. And each of these, if you go into the effect options, they usually have a whole bunch of tweakable options. And this is like the bare minimum scan line type shader, which again I never use, but a lot of this stuff is just there for demonstrative purposes. If somebody wanted to actually make their own shaders, but mostly people would just want to convert RetroArch shaders. So
Yeah, all right. So clear selection, screen filtered point. Yeah, that's what we want.
yep.
Center left. It might actually be better for the stream if I said it like that. So,
Yeah, that's true.
so 5x would actually be 1200. So I could just leave it like that, I think.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, generally, integer multiple will just try to fit it as well as it can to the display area without messing up the ratio or the pixel size effectively.
Oh, okay. Well, let me set it back to that then.
So if that doesn't match fit
Yeah.
to axis exactly, then there's some discrepancy there. But
No, it does. It looks like it matches perfectly.
cool.
Wow, this looks great. Somebody else had asked for what was it? Hold on, let me scroll back up here. Iron Soldier.
Yeah. There is a script for that one. I
For
think all I did was add analog controls for it.
for one or two or both.
Only one at the moment, I believe. One of my buddies, Durocrash, did a script for two, but it's not included. in the distribution.
And I'm just gonna reload it. Soldier.
And I think the analog stuff you did for Checkered Flag should carry over and should just work.
Hmm. Ah, thank you for the super chat, Ariel. Much appreciated. Oh, Voltar streaming right now. You know, fuck Voltar. No, I'm kidding. I was just talking to him like 5 minutes ago, or 5 minutes before I started this one. I did another one of his 2-chip SNES bypasses, and the composite video and S video were too bright. And I'm sending him pictures of the install, and we spent a lot of time trying to fix it. And finally, he's like, "It's probably just your shitty soldering." I was like, "Yeah, whatever." And I went back and retouched every point, and it worked. So it was my shitty soldering.
Yeah, it was race. Yeah, I haven't talked to him in a while. I ran into him for the first time back when I first released the simulator. I guess it's been coming up on a couple of years now.
Hmm.
And he just had, I think it, like he mentioned that he got his start in Jedi Academy modding or something, which was a fascinating thing for me because, of course, Jedi Academy is one of the games that I worked on in my early game developer career.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. Voltar, I mean, we love busting each other's chops, but he gets a bad rap. He doesn't deserve the hate that he gets. A lot of people don't understand what's a joke and what's not.
Yeah, yeah, I've gathered that he's got, his persona online, and then he's, generally a good guy otherwise, and so I can understand people not getting the personality thing.
Yeah, I gotta admit, like years ago, somebody asked me what my guilty pleasure was, and I said something pompous like, "I don't care what people think of me, so I don't. Why would I ever feel guilty about something that makes me happy?" But I do have a guilty pleasure when people don't get that Voltar and I are joking with each other, and they think that we're dead. Like we would like take our beef public and like say the ridiculous things that we say to each other, and it makes me laugh when people don't get it.
Yeah.
Hey, stupid question. How do I move forward and back in this game?
It's a real weird control scheme. I think it's like you hold C or A and push forward on the D-pad, but also by default. Oh, that's right. You didn't bind the second analog stick. The analog script would make it so you got analog control over acceleration on the right stick.
Oh, we
But
should take a moment to do that. That's going to
yeah,
change the game, if you will. All right.
and that'll be on device 2, I believe.
Set bindings.
So analog 1.
Off. Here we go. All right, and that's all I need to do. Just back out, right?
Yep. And is the right stick controlling your momentum now
Um, no. But the D-pad is.
without having to hold the button? The D-pad is.
Yeah,
I think there's got to be something janky going on with that controller because it seems like it
probably
must
is.
be. It's got to be in some kind of mode where it's mapping the analogs to the D-pad is in addition to the analogs or something. Um, but back out real quick and go to script settings under system, and let's make sure underneath all these checkered flag items. All right. Okay. Yeah, it should be working. Everything's enabled, so must be something off with the binds, I guess.
Just try resetting. Never know. Uh, Super Mega Graphics 64 wants to know how much time you've put into it.
Like the emulator in total?
Yeah, and I guess I would answer that both since you started it for the Atari 50 collection and since you've continued it on your own afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess like, the timeline for getting the emulator up and running compatible with all the carts was about 3 months. And that was basically the version of it that shipped with Atari 50. And, since then I've made all kinds of little improvements to accuracy and functionality and fixed emulation bugs that were present in the Atari 50 version and stuff like that. Um, and I'd say like so the basic cartridge retail compatibility was about 3 months. Jaguar CD was maybe like another month and a half of I don't know, not full time work because at that point this was all like Patreon funded and then like off dealing with other contract projects and cancer and all that nonsense. Um, but then like beyond that, I'd say it's largely unquantifiable because I've been chipping away at this thing for like basically since I released it, and obviously it hasn't been full time work, but I've been adding all kinds of little things here and there and working on this scripting system a whole lot. And I did a Patreon poll not too long ago and asked people like what the next thing should be. And I mentioned, I've got the bones of a PlayStation emulator that I've been sitting on for quite a while now. It's just been something that I've gradually developed as a function of reverse engineering PlayStation games because I reverse engineer games for a whole bunch of different platforms. And oftentimes I'll end up writing like emulators for components of those systems to help me debug stuff um, and otherwise figure out like how data structures and code are working together.
Hmm.
And so I've got kind of the bones of a PlayStation emulator at this point. And the Patreons voted that I think 50 something percent of them are cool with me kind of going ahead with that PlayStation emulator and polishing it up to a releasable state. So kind of my plan there is to get that done within the Big Pimu framework. And so all this scripting system work that I've done for Big Pimu is going to carry over to that and all these interesting little types of enhancements and functionalities and frameworks are going to carry over to the PlayStation world, which um, I don't think there's like anything generally in the realm of emulation that takes quite this approach to scripts and enhancements and stuff. So I'm kind of actually excited about applying this to some of the PlayStation games that I love as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty
Um,
awesome.
yeah.
I am out of bullets.
Yeah, this game is pretty unforgiving in that regard. You gotta go around and punch buildings now and get some ammo.
Oh my god, really? That's what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, like randomly you'll like punch a building down and it'll have like a little ammo crate inside it. That's it. That's at least when I play it. That's one of the main places I get ammo from. But I may be playing it poorly. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna move on to the next game then. That was pretty cool. Now, if I move on to a different game, will I have to remove the script or will it do that automatically?
No, the scripts that are for each game only apply to that game. It's got hash checksum checking and all that.
Okay. Let's see what other what's another one that you've done a script for that we should show off?
Let's see here. So like probably not gonna do VR on the stream. I don't know if that translate too well, but
Yeah.
um,
I have a
so
spinner
like
controller. We could try Tempest if you want me to use the spinner controller.
um, it might require a bit of setup. I don't know. I could give it a try, but it could also go disastrously. It's up to you.
Yeah, let me just try it without it because somebody had asked about Tempest, and I agree. I just want to see how this looks in native 1200p here.
Yeah, the so Cybermorph and Checkered Flag are the two that I've done actual like native rendering scripts for, where it's using hardware accelerated geometry rendering at the native resolution and stuff.
All right, we'll definitely do Cybermorph next.
All right.
Yeah, so this just looks like it looks like the best original Jaguar run through a RetroTink 4K. That's what this looks like. Because it's integer scaled, everything looks perfect, the colors look flawless. This is yeah, this is very cool. Wow, what a completely different game without the spinner. That's pretty funny. I'll just try it for one more minute. I'm not going to make everybody watch me lose at this game with the D-pad, but I just kind of wanted to see this because this was exactly what I expected it to look like. Just like perfect 2D graphics.
Yeah, it does work with like so if you have a real Jaguar spinner, and you've got a Jaguar adapter. It definitely does work. And basically, the way that Jaguar adapter works is it feeds that spinner input as mouse input.
Okay.
So to get it set up with that, you've got to go enable mouse input, and then you have to change the input one type to rotary, and then enabling the Tempest 2000 rotary script will basically do some stuff for you automatically that you'd have to otherwise be bothered with in the game. Like it'll automatically enable rotary controls in the game if you do have your input device set to a rotary controller. And it will fix up some stuff that was just broken with rotary control originally. Like it'll make the bonus rounds more controllable, and it will allow you to like use the name when you get a high score, the name entry that will also work with rotary controls thanks to that script. So basically, this fixes a few things up and automates a couple things.
Very cool. Should I be unhighlighting all of the ones that I'm not using?
It really doesn't matter. Like the overhead of having them enabled when you're not running games that are applicable to them is just like it'll make a little script callback, and the script will say, "Oh no, this ROM hash doesn't match the one I'm interested in," and it'll just do nothing. So it's a pretty negligible overhead to have all those enabled.
Cool. That's kind of what I figured. I figured I would just ask.
Yeah. Except for like the Turbo Joy script, which is new in this Patreon build. What the? Looks like it is not rendering a native resolution. Oh, that might actually be the issue here. Although I don't know why you're backwards. Maybe hit a numpad thing. You might have loaded a cybermorph that does not match the hash the script is expecting, because I know there are multiple versions of this game in the world.
Oh, do you have one available? You could just drop in Discord, or
Yeah, sure. Take a look here.
because this is Cybermorph World Rev B.
Yeah, Rev A is the 2 MB one. I guess at some point they cut it down to fit into a 1 meg cartridge.
Those cheap
But
bastards. All right.
yeah.
Hey, what's up, Smoke Monster? Great to see you, man. And if for anybody that wasn't here at the beginning, quote unquote, installing the Big Pimu emulator is literally just extracting the folder and running it. So very cool that there's not really any stress with this.
I just sent you the Rev A.
All right, load that back up.
And you can also just load the individual zip file in emulator if you prefer to have all your ROMs individually zipped.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's a good feature. All right, here we go. Rev A, 2 MB. Oh, I can't remember if I still have the. I would have to remount the script, right? No, it's there. Okay. Whoa! I don't know why I just flipped reverse again, but. Oh, there we go. Is it? Does it still look like it's rendering correctly? No, it doesn't seem like it is. Right? Yeah, when I hit A, it flips me backwards. Weird. Is there anything in the settings I should be messing with? Uh-oh, we have a frozen Rich. Uh-oh. Rich's internet connection has been which is why we were kind of a little late to get started. So please excuse us if this happens, and I will just try my best to figure out what the heck's going on. Here. Screensaver. Hey, you're back.
Sorry, my internet went out again.
All good.
I'm on my phone tether now because my ISP is being terrible today, so connection might be awful.
So it looked amazing because it immediately rendered in the higher resolution, but the controls seem a little bit funk. When I pressed what should be the shoot button, it sends me backwards.
Okay, that's a
So
bit
like here's
odd.
shoot, and now yeah,
It seems like for some reason it thinks the left analog is pushed maybe, so when you hit the shoot button, it is also hitting one of those numpad keys to make it look backwards.
weird.
Something's definitely wonky with the binds it's using for this controller.
Was
Um,
was the
it,
draw distance always this bad?
yeah, it stands out a lot more when it's a native res.
Yeah, but like look at the ship, it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh wow, this is really
So
awesome. So should I just
one
try
thing
the
that
controls or something just to double check?
I was gonna say go to input and actually go to input plugin down there. And let's try the SDL2 plugin for you and see if you have better luck with this wingman thing you're using. It's gonna also change like the display driver and everything on you, but
Yeah, that made me hold on, let me it stuck it in the wrong side or in the wrong monitor here. So I want to go
okay.
to window. Okay, now I should be back over here.
All right.
All right,
Looks like it's working.
that should be good enough. So I'm just gonna leave it like that.
And you are going to have to go rebind your analog twos to use them for some of these games, but let's ignore that for now. It doesn't matter for Cybermorph. Let's see if the
Ah,
default
and the
SDL2
audio as
binds.
well. We needed to go back in and
Oh no, that should still be good. Yeah.
pretty loud though.
Hmm. I wonder if that is not working correctly in the SDL2 plugin. Possible.
Yeah, that's pretty loud.
I thought I tested it, but
Interesting.
let's see here. I'm looking at the code right now to
I'm
see if I messed that up.
gonna go back to direct input and see if that changes the audio.
All right.
Yeah, that did change the audio back to normal.
Okay.
Um, somebody talked about Alien versus Predator, so maybe we should look into. We should do that.
Alrighty.
Alien versus Predator.
Go to script settings real quick.
Sure.
Let's see what I got. So, got analog controls for this one. It's also an optional stereoscopic mode, which is interesting.
What
But
would I need? Would I just need red and blue glasses, or?
yeah, there's a whole bunch of different like there's anaglyph modes, there's side by side. Like maybe side by side would be better for the stream because then people can just cross their eyes and see like inside. But yeah, if you want, you can just load it up without that first and take a look at it.
Yeah. Let me do that. Have you still been doing stuff with the Video Game History Foundation?
Yeah, I mean, like basically, that's at the point where like I talk to Frank like I don't know once or twice a month maybe, and just kind of get a feel for what's going on. But I haven't been actively working on any of my projects with them. Um, I still got one kind of sideline that I really would like to get back to at some points,
Mm.
but yeah, limited productivity these days. So I've been trying to mostly focus on big PMU stuff whenever I actually get the ability to work.
Mm.
As well as I've done like a couple little contract things this year, but it certainly looks like volume is hooked up for the SDL2 plugin, so that'd be, I guess, another thing they'll have to investigate.
You could always count on me to break stuff. That's my old boss used to tell everybody that. You know, if you really want to make sure that your product is secure, send it to Bob. He'll break it.
Yeah, it's kind of part of like moving into the PlayStation thing too that I'm hoping to benefit from is just the fact that I've spent so much time and effort developing this whole framework that the emulator is using from scratch, basically, supporting all these different platforms and interfaces. And so that should get me, off the ground running pretty well when I move into another emulator, and it should also come back and benefit this one as I fix more actual like framework bugs that are shared between things.
Yeah. Now this is. Did this increase the frame rate?
I believe by default it is moving it maybe to a cap of 20 hertz from 15 hertz. So yeah, I think it does give you a little boost by default.
Because I was gonna say it feels better than the. I mean, I didn't play this game a lot. I'm by no means an expert, but it definitely felt like there's more frames here.
Yeah, and you can only go up so high in this game because it is not written to adapt to variable frame rates too well. So if you
Hmm.
just go crazy and go and cap it at 60, the whole game will be running in super speed mode, basically.
Am I doing something wrong here?
No, this is just the game. Like the Predator melee weapons get some real questionable collision and hit registering with it. I've noticed,
Yeah.
which as I've definitely verified that's on hardware too, so it's not not an emulation bug.
I mean, I don't care how tough of a marine you are. If you're getting stabbed by finger knives repeatedly, you're not gonna just stand there. Here we go.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of like there's some weird angle stuff where you stab and you get the hit sound registering, but it's not actually registering damage for some reason.
Hmm.
At least that's how it feels. I haven't actually debugged it, but
Oh, all right. Well, anybody in the chat wants us to see or wants to see specific games, please call it out and we'll mess with it. And Rich, is there anything else that you want to see on this, like that you want to show off? Because you've done so much work on this thing. Any games, any scripts, anything like that?
yeah, let's take a look at the scripts list again and see what we got going. Uh, it would be cool to show off Alien versus Predator multiplayer, but we'd have to deal with port forwarding and stuff, so
Yeah,
probably not going to happen. um, see what else we got going on.
I'll talk to the
A lot,
X-Link people and to a couple other friends. Maybe we could all just get that working and see if that'll motivate people to use it.
yeah, yeah, certainly a possibility. Like so, most of these scripts are like adding analog support to give a given game. I
Like
think
Brett
we've already
Hull
looked at the
Hockey is
ones.
analog support added.
No, that one is basically just because it's a prototype. It's got some weird bugs and timing issues. And if you enable a script, it's just a hack that'll make it, not flicker. It'll run correctly, pretty
Ah, okay.
much. Um,
I don't even know if I have
and
that.
then
Let me see if I have that game.
Turbo
Oh,
Turbo
yes, I do.
Joy is another one that has been added with this updates, and it's basically like it allows you to um, do like simple little like turbo mode controls. So you've got a new turbo key, and you can toggle turbo mode for buttons on and off.
That's
And there are
cool.
some script settings that turn that into either like a button hold or automated pressing over an interval without having to hold the button.
Hmm.
Um, and so like that, I mostly did that because one of my friends requested um, that I add support for that to the emulator because he just gets tired of like in what's the one like Raiden 2 I think is one where you're just having to push the button constantly. And I was like, well, I don't really want to make that something I support innately in the emulator, and it seems like it better be like a script functionality type thing. So that's been piled onto the script functionality pile, and like it would be cool to see like other people try to use the script functionality. Like a couple people have over the past couple years now, but I haven't gotten a whole lot of interest from like Jaguar programmers to do script specific stuff so far, unfortunately. So it's just been me
Hmm.
for the most part making stuff.
Wow, that voice reminds me of Sporks Talk Baseball for the Genesis. Wow, that's terrible.
Yeah, this one is definitely it did not make it to retail, so this is just a prototype ROM from the game in some random state. It's playable, but
Yeah, not a great game.
definitely it's got some pretty serious timing issues, so that's why I'm like I'm not gonna like change the core emulator timing to account for this thing. I'm just gonna make a script and hack around it.
Yeah, right. I'm blown away at the voices. This is all right. Well, I think we could go to a different game. What did you do with Doom?
So that one, there is now a control in the script settings if you enable that script that you can enable music. So that'll basically like hook up the music that's already in the Jaguar ROM and the existing music playback code, and it will do the mixing between sound effects and music in the script to combine the two.
Did you mess with the frame
But
rate on this too?
so by default, it's actually capping the frame rate at 20 through that script. And there's a whole conversation about this in my Discord recently because somebody came in wanting to know kind of like how Jaguar Doom originally operated. And by default in the emulator, um, basically the timing for the blitter and stuff will generally err on being faster than hardware because I'm not correctly emulating things like bus contention or the various components in the Jaguar are waiting on the bus to do reads and writes and so forth. And so basically, by default, Doom will run like up to 30 hertz because the frame rate is actually capped at 30 hertz on Jaguar hardware. It just never manages to run that fast. And so that was kind of this dispute because people have been under the impression that it was capped at 15 hertz on the Jaguar, and it definitely wasn't. And so I can't remember what that port of Doom is now. It's basically like a port of the Jaguar code to PC world, so it runs on Windows and Linux and such. And they have the frame rate capped at 15 because they were under the impression that Jaguar Doom caps the frame rate at 15 because the source code actually has comments saying that it caps the frame rate at 15, and it has some C code that caps it at 15, but then the actual meaningful cap is running on the Jaguar GPU, and it is basically checking the number of vertical interrupts that have passed in such a way that it is not capping at 15, it's capping at 30. And it's very possible that's a bug. I think maybe Carmack meant for it to be capped at 15, but it isn't. And so in the emulator by default, it can feel jerky because it's actually like bouncing all around between 15 and 30 or so as you turn different angles and the blur has different amounts of work that it's doing through the frame basically.
Mm.
And so yeah, like that was the whole thing that I just kind of researched on a tangent recently. And so I made that script to artificially cap the frame rate at 20 by default and make it feel a little closer to hardware. There are script settings in there that you can make it, lock it to 15, 20, or 30, whatever you want.
Mm.
And then of course there's also the option to enable music now, which kind of a novelty, I guess.
Yeah, I think I forgot to do that when I started the game, but I suck at Doom anyway. Yeah, like the voices in this are infinitely better than that hockey game.
Do you have any of the CD games?
I should
Or
have all
just
of them,
cart?
yeah.
Okay.
Let's This is just another example of how great just 2D games look with this though, because you just have the integer scaling built in.
Yeah. And like by default, so you can also customize like the actual scan window of the Jaguar basically, and by default, um, I've made it line up to 320 by 240, so that it nicely fits all of those PC centric resolutions.
Oh,
But there are
nice.
also like options to like automatically fit the scan window to whatever the time registers are set to for that particular game, which usually works out pretty well. Not all games do that correctly, but that's not at all faithful to hardware. That's just like some nice emulator functionality, you know.
Nice. Has anybody hooked this up to a CRT? Do you know of
Yeah,
any?
actually, one of my Patreon subscribers mentioned to me the other week that he was doing that, and had some praise for like how faithful it looked compared to like he had his Jaguar hooked up to the CRT and the emulator running on the CRT side by side basically,
That's
and he
great.
was pleased with how faithful it looked. At least I haven't actually done that myself, so I can't say that I've scrutinized it, but anecdotal reports are that it looks nice.
There's quite a few different ways to go about doing it, whether it's downscaling or running at native resolutions. So there's always going to be stuff that could go wrong, but I'd be really interested to
Yeah,
see how running it in, if you had like an arcade VGA, running it in true 320 by 240 mode would look or something like that. That'd be pretty neat.
yeah. Yeah, I've actually got an arcade cabinet out there with an old arcade VGA still running Windows XP, so I
Huh.
could. Um, I think this thing would run on XP, although the latest Microsoft CRTs might be tying it to Vista at this point, so I haven't tested it.
All right, which Jag CD game would you like me to fire up?
Let's see.
Battle Morph just for
I
shits
don't
and
know. I mean,
giggles?
yeah, Battlemorph is a pretty good game, honestly. Like, can take a little getting used to, but we'll see if you have that same problem in this one with the camera being tied to your acceleration button for some reason.
I'm hitting the B button.
Hmm.
No, not that.
What was up with that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's very strange. So let's make sure
Let's
no scripts are on, right? Yep. No,
uh, no, that wouldn't be it. Let's go to the input menu and just do a reset all at the bottom of this menu.
that one.
Yeah, that should cover your controller pretty thoroughly. And now let's see if the situation has improved in game.
I should
So
probably have
now
to reset it because it didn't. Last time we did that, we had to reset. So
that shouldn't make a difference for the input layer, but
nope.
all right, let's go back to the input menu and go to input device one and set bindings. And let's just have you set all and just like manually set all these inputs on your controller in case the SDL2 mapping is using. Or sorry, you can just go to the top there and hit set all,
Okay.
and that'll take you through each of the inputs.
I love that little animation with the cable. That's pretty cool. How do I skip a button if I don't want to do the number pads?
You can't really. Like, I guess you could just put them all on a garbage key on your keyboard if you want.
I'll just assign them to actual numbers.
Yeah, that works.
Asterisks. All right.
All right. So, whatever that associated, hopefully it will now work. So like Jaguar A, B, and C are just not working.
Yeah, let me just restart it because this is Windows. You could be the best dev in the world. You're still working in Windows. So,
And before you load it,
ah, shit. I'm sorry. I just hit load.
yeah, I just wanted to take a look at the hash and see if like this is a weird rip or something.
Yeah. All right. Let me load software, and that's the hash right there.
Okay, let's take a look here.
I'll be honest. I have no idea where I got any of these. There was a time where I knew where I got all the sources, and then people were putting packs together, and yeah, I don't know. And then with the game drive and the compatibility, originally you had to use specific kinds. So I don't remember what versions I got.
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense that the in-game button's having issues here. Obviously, I've tested this one with this build pretty extensively. Uh, yeah, that is the correct hash. So you're
Weird.
using the same copy of the game that I am.
All right, let's try Hover Strike.
I think there's got to be something with that wingman controller that's going wonky. Which unfortunately, I'd like to see that working with the SDL2 controller and see if it works better, but then you have the volume issue.
Yeah. I mean, if you have
Which
the
also
ability to
doesn't make
turn your
sense.
microphone up quite a bit, I could just turn the volume down on OBS.
Let's see if I got any relevant settings here.
It seems to be working.
Huh, okay.
So it was
I
just
wonder
that
if
one
it's like,
game. Yeah.
yeah, it could be that, like, for some reason that input is triggering more than one input in reality. Like, it's tied to more than one input somehow. And it could be that Cybermorph has an issue with that. Like, it could just be, oh, well, cancels out of function because this other button is pushed from precedence or something. Anyway, just trying to find some microphone settings. I'm probably going to want to debug with you offline after the stream.
Sure.
Take advantage of the fact that I found somebody with issues on their system.
You could always count on me to break shit. Man, this game is terrible.
Yeah, it's not one of my favorites. I've got the mic volume cranked all the way up in Discord, but I think there's probably another system setting for it somewhere.
Could be. I have no way to separate, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Uh, Actually, I might. Hold on a minute. I have an idea. Can you select what the audio output is in this? Like, use what audio device?
No, it just uses the system default.
All right, I'm going to try something. If I completely screw up the stream, everybody just hold on. I'll be back in a second. Scott Robertson wants to know if any homebrew developers reached out to you personally to ask for any features on the emulator.
Yeah, it's been a pretty ongoing thing. Quite a few Jaguar divs are Patreon supporters, and so this latest version, like there's you might have noticed that unaligned load what was the other one? Mad Bodies, and he had a little bug in the emulator that was basically resulting in it's got a little 3D intro where it comes up with the 3D Stooges logo and the letters spin around and such. And only the first letter was rendering, and that had been a bug with the emulator for quite some time. I was working on hardware, and so he finally reached out and asked me to look into that with this latest release. And it turned out that he had a bug in his code. It was an unaligned load from the GPU, and it was relying on some incredibly bizarre behavior from the hardware that I'd never seen until I went to actually prod around that that bit of the hardware to figure out what was going on here. And when you do an unaligned load of a full, 32-bit word from the GPU, it apparently the contents of that load depend on the contents of the upper word around that memory. So basically, like, if that memory was zeroed out, it will zero out the high words for you. But if it was not, the high words will just be, potentially garbage or potentially something else that was in the register. So it's really weird behavior that you generally wouldn't expect to see, but of course, all the docs say don't do unaligned loads. This behavior is, fully undocumented, so it's not terribly surprising to see hardware doing crazy stuff with that. But basically, um, fixing that and making it do what the hardware does would have imposed some significant CPU overhead in the interpreter. So what I did was I made the developer builds handle it correctly and warned the developer that, hey, you've got an unlined load here, this could cause all kinds of problems. And then for the retail builds, I made a script for him so so that he could see his logo functioning correctly with the script hack without having to run the dev builds, basically.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's one instance where a developer has reached out to me, but it's been pretty good for quite a few now. Different features and stuff. And of course, I know at least a couple people are using the actual developer builds and using the Noesis debugger integration and stuff like that. Which, if you are a Jaguar developer and you haven't used that, I know the interface is a little clunky, but the actual functionality is very powerful. So you should check it out. It'll probably save you some time and effort.
Hmm. So I think I got it working. I can't actually hear the audio, so I'm gonna need people in the chat to tell me, is this all is this too loud, not loud enough? Can you hear it? Am I not hearing it?
I can't tell you because I haven't had audio from it on the Discord stream over here. So
Yeah. Scott says he could hear it. All right. So let me just put the game back on. So can you still hear the game and then hear us talk? Because because I'm midstream, I can't reset OBS, so I have to rely on you all. Okay.
I am talking. Can you hear me as well?
All right. I can raise the game a little bit because somebody said that it's a little quiet, but okay. So let's go back and go input plugin, and then we'll go back to try battle morph, and let's see how loud this is. And I could even turn it down if it's too loud. So
welcome to enter a name.
Yeah, that's obviously working now. Okay, look at that.
Cool. Yeah, there must just be, like, with the way the direct input plugin is mapping your controller, it's trying to use an old SDL2 database. So whatever's going on there, at least the SDL2 plugin is happier.
Cool.
Note for future tech support.
Good luck.
And there are no patches for this, right? This is just vanilla.
Yep. Yeah, I've been thinking about maybe doing a native rendering plugin for this one too. It'd be definitely more involved in Cybermorph because you got more interesting effects, like you can go underwater and you got all of the rippling effects and stuff like that, so that would need special attention for native rendering.
Well, let me try Cybermorph again and see if it's see if the same thing happens with the patch on. Hold on, actually, let me go back. Script modules, Cybermorph. Two megabyte version. All right, let's check it out.
Good luck.
Yeah,
Sweet.
working perfect. Quote unquote perfect. Dude, I mean, just look at this, right? This is the 64-bit Atari Jaguar, and on screen there's a HUD, ship, and 3 blue testicles. I don't fucking know what it is. Like, what? Like, this was supposed to be their answer to Star Fox.
Well done.
Yeah.
This is just. I don't know how anybody at Atari ever thought this was gonna work.
It's like you can tell
Avoid the
by the
ground.
game design that like this game was made by people I think who predominantly are programmers. Because it's very structured and it's very kind of like procedural in the way the gameplay unfolds, and it's like, yeah, on paper it sounds like way cooler than Star Fox because you can do all these different things and you got different objectives and you're jumping around between different worlds potentially in a non-linear way. Um, but like the feel is just not there, you know.
Yeah. Scott Robertson wants to know what's been the hardest part of the development of Big Pimu.
Um, I don't know. I mean, like, so there's a lot of different ways to answer that question. Like, technically, hardest would be different from uh, laboriously hardest. You know, there are some things that are more time consuming, some things that are harder to actually figure out. So, like, harder to figure out, and I think would have been the upfronts of just like figuring out all the timing problems and what was causing them and these different conditions and trying to get some semblance of accurate hardware timing, or at least accurate enough to not run into a whole bunch of, you know, different risk pipelining bugs and stuff like that, without actually taking that more expensive step of doing like correct bus emulation, which would require, of course, all the different hardware components to run fully interleaved at all times, and then you've got a whole bunch of overhead for every read that every component does, and the blitter would slow way down, and so um, like that would be kind of a cool thing to tackle for, you know, much more capable hardware, but especially in that like Atari 50 timeline, it just wasn't viable at all for something that had to run on a Nintendo Switch. And
Yeah.
so the fundamental approach I took there was just like, let's just try to sidestep all this stuff and try to use like, uh, you know, mostly pulled out of my butt heuristics when it comes to like figuring out how much overhead the blitter is going to have based on what the other components in the system are doing at the time. It's kind of like, yeah, it's not never going to be faithful to hardware entirely, but we can, you know, approximate it well enough that you know, the result is we can manage to get through the retail library at least without choking on anything. Um, so yeah, that was like just figuring that stuff out and incrementally making changes to the core timing and improving and fixing things while having to do regression testing and figure out like what my fixes potentially broke, which I think is the usual. That's the hard thing about emulation in general.
Yeah.
But like in terms of labor hours, I'd say like the whole framework around it has been like I hate doing UI stuff. And of course, you can see the emulator has its whole own UI. And this version, actually, there's a new touch interface option that you can enable in the input menu, and that's basically like enables all the functionality that I had to do to make the whole interface touch friendly for the mobile port. And there's like, you know, a whole touch overlay and everything for it's enabled by default on the iPhone, but you can also actually manually enable it in Windows. And if you're playing on like a Windows ARM machine or a Windows tablet or something that's got multi-touch support, so you actually could use all this work that's been done from the iOS and use the touch interface and everything on the Windows port if you had a device, you know, suited for that.
That's
Um,
pretty awesome.
yeah, yeah, but there a ton of work went into that actually, like probably more than I anticipated would be necessary. And so like just like all these little things, they're not hard at all. It's like really kind of menial labor work, but the sheer number of hours that you have to put into the stuff still adds up quite a bit. Um, and in my recent like I think I'd estimate my current productivity with like all the illness stuff that I'm having to deal with at something like 10 to 20% of what it was back when I first released this thing just a couple years ago before all these, terrible symptoms started setting in.
Yeah.
So like that makes the more laborious side of it, like UI work, um, much more arduous because it's like, oh man, I feel like I've been plugging away on this UI stuff for like a week, and it like
Yeah.
something that should have taken me like a day previously, So that's been pretty crushing. Even though it's not, stuff that I have to think about, it's still stuff that I have to like sit down and do.
Yeah, I feel you there because while I'm not a programmer, there's sometimes like to get shots of CRTs for the video, it's an hour or two of setup and tweaking, and for 15 seconds of of a example in one of my videos, or the opposite, right? Like I'll get I'll be able to get footage pretty easily, but then
Yeah.
once I put it in Premiere and I try to do these side by side comparisons, hours and hours of painstaking and boring work.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah, the fun stuff for me is like the enhancements, of course, like doing different things and adding on to games. Because I'm still a game developer at heart, and so doing that side of things is a lot of fun for me. But also like the actual core emulation stuff, figuring out how hardware works and trying to come up with creative approximations to be much more efficient in the software emulation side of things, while also approximating hardware in an accurate enough way. Like that's kind of a fun creative puzzle for me to solve as well.
Is this like a role playing top down adventure game?
I don't know if I'd call it role playing, but like it's a it's a pretty weird game.
Yeah, I'm not liking it. Thanks, Gallhart. Appreciate that. What a strange game.
Yeah, I've never played all the way through this one. I think I made it maybe like 5 or 6 levels in before I'm just like, all right, see what this game is. I think I've had enough.
Is there a way in the emulator to see when the oh, big trouble? Okay, go back. Like, is there a way to see when the main chips are being used as opposed to like the X86K? Because like you could tell, like you could almost see the backgrounds on some of this are like pretty cheesy. And but like even with Trevor McFur, like the rocks that were floating at you looked definitely higher resolution than 16-bit, but a lot of the other stuff didn't.
Yeah, I mean, in the developer builds, you could certainly like um, do some interesting logging and just figure out like when the GPU and DSP are active through the frame.
Hmm.
But the reality of most of these games is like most of them do use the GPU to some degree. Even though it's a popular sentiment, they're like, oh no, they're just lazy 68K ports. Um, Very rarely do I come across a game that is just exclusively running everything on the 68K, at least in the retail library.
I was just gonna say, yeah,
And
homebrew. I think there's been quite a few people that did that.
yeah, definitely. But like when it comes to retail games, like usually the reason they look shitty, I think, is just because they didn't have enough time for art. Like
Yeah.
uh, like Trevor McFur is a good example of like that is some pre-Photoshop looking artwork in that game.
Why is it taking so long to load the game for a cartridge-based game?
I haven't actually debugged and looked at like what they're doing for this game, but I do know this one makes pretty heavy use of BPEG, and BPEG was basically like Jaguar's JPEG version of JPEG. All the same principles. It uses like different coefficients, like different quantization tables and stuff, but it's basically JPEGs. And so that stuff gets decoded statically by usually a GPU program, although I think it can run on the DSP too, but usually it's a program running on the GPU and just decoding the full image into like either Cry or RGB decompressed version in RAM.
Huh.
and so they could be doing that a lot in this game and like doing that stuff at load time. Oh, I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just speculating.
This game is not very good.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, this particular version of the prototype, there's no way to actually play it. Like it
Yeah.
plays itself. And like I've come across videos of people like running this thing and like quote unquote playing it, and like I don't think you're actually playing there. I think it's like
Do you
playing
think
itself.
people are
Like
pretending to play it? Or do you
I
think
think
maybe
maybe
people are not
I
understanding that
think
it's not working?
I think maybe they think they're playing it because they're pushing stuff and stuff is happening on screen, but it's like yeah,
Huh.
as far as I can tell, the game cannot be played.
Because that
Unless
just
maybe
happened to
there's
me.
like
I just hit the B button and he shot a pass, or he shot shot the ball.
yeah,
So I was like, okay, and it took me a couple seconds to realize that that's not what was going on.
yeah,
But well,
yeah,
weird.
like it can feel like you're playing it, but then it's like, oh, actually, it's kind of playing itself, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
unless
Scott
there's like,
Robertson wants to know, do you have a favorite Jaguar game, and do you plan to try your hand at making a homebrew for it if you have time?
um, my favorite, like, I think I have like different categories of favorites, like, in terms of games that are well suited to the hardware. I think Tempest 2000 is probably still the winner because it intentionally is designed to not need to do a lot of frame buffer writes, and so it runs pretty well on the hardware. And the game is just generally well suited to the strengths and weaknesses of the Jaguar,
Mm.
which it's really weakened. Like what I was gonna say earlier, that like most of the performance problems you see in Jaguar games stem from bus contention for the most part, just like the object processor and the blitter contending for bus access and choking out the CPUs at various points in the frame. There's a whole list of bus priorities and the order of which devices are granted access to the bus on hardware, but basically like um, for the most part it just did not have adequate memory bandwidth because of that, because all these different components are contending for the bus all the time. So even if you're doing things in a way that seems like it should be efficient and everything should be running parallel, that bus contention is always going to be what really drags performance down. And that was another thing that I was just noticing in Doom. Sorry, I'm totally getting off track on the actual question here, but
No, it's
just
all
gonna go with
interesting.
it
So
for a little
keep it
bit.
going. Keep it going.
Yeah, yeah. So I noticed in Doom that like by default in the emulator with default settings, the menus tick by way too fast. Like you load up the game and it starts the intro loop after like 2 seconds. Where on hardware it's more like 8 to 10 seconds. And so I dug into that a little bit on hardware, and it turns out that the menu background in Doom is 260 pixels tall, and NTSC practical progressive scan resolution is 262 lines, and so basically it also has the object processor activated for the whole frame, like every single line. So the OP is basically just like suffocating the whole system just to draw that background, and then it's doing a bunch of blitter operations on top of that, which are causing bus contention with the OP and with the CPUs. And it turns out that just that tiny bit of copying that it's doing in the menu is enough to suffocate the hardware so badly that it slows the system down by a factor of between 5 and 10, which I thought was pretty entertaining to realize that like all those Doom, because Doom has hard coded timings for the menus. It's like, oh yeah, you'll let 120 frames tick by and then start the demo loop. So all those timings that are hard coded for the Jaguar in there are based on just happening to have a background image in the menu that is completely suffocating the bus. So if an artist came along and they're like, "Hey John, I want to like put this new image in the menu and it's only like 220 lines tall," which is reasonable because you're never going to see 260 lines on a real world CRT NTSC compatible display. If somebody come along and put new art in there, it would have like completely thrown the menu timings off, and John would have had to go through and change all these hard coded numbers.
Jeez.
So but yeah, so like getting back to the question, I guess the Jaguar was like a pretty difficult thing, I think, for a lot of developers to get their head around when it came to figuring out why performance was actually as bad as it was. And that was another thing where John Carmack, gave some retrospect on Jag Doom at some point, and he said some things like, "Oh well, the real problem was the DSP was the main bottleneck. We're trying to do clipping and stuff in there, and I don't think he even at that point had like realized that it wasn't really the DSP bottlenecking things. It was actually bus contention just causing the entire frame to just die in Doom basically.
Hmm.
And so there were some things that could have been done to um, reduce bus contention basically for the whole frame, and like that could have sped things up a lot. But like that kind of showcases to me, like even for John Carmack, it's apparently like pretty hard for him to truly assess like where the performance detriment was throughout the frame and what the real bottlenecks were, because Jaguar can be so tricky and like hiding that kind of stuff. Or if you're just using like a naive frame profiler, you're gonna see time in different categories that's really misleading, because the time spent in those different profile categories is really dependent on like what the object processor and blitter and stuff are also doing at that time, because um, memory latency is such a huge part of your profile time for anything that you're trying to do on Jaguar, basically. Um, but yes, so Tempest 2000, and I appreciate Alien versus Predator for some aspects of it. Other aspects, it's kind of a terrible game to play. So it's like, you know,
Yeah.
everything's got its strengths and weaknesses on the Jag, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, there was another question here. What the heck? I just saw it here. Electron Ash is in here doing another build of the Mister version of the core. Ash, it needs spinner support, man. The version I have, I plugged in my USB spinner and it didn't do shit. So you got to help me out with that one. That's because let's be honest, if somebody's gonna do a dual RAM on Mister just to get it working, they're gonna want to play Tempest. So you got to get that worked out. Favorite Jaguar game? Let me. I must have missed the questions. But any other questions? Fire away. I'm gonna show. We're doing this for an hour and a half, so I'm gonna show some more settings and stuff. But I think everybody gets the idea. This emulator is freaking awesome, and 2D games just look like you're putting it through a Tink 4K, basically. Let's go to screen effects. And what was the good CRT filter you thought?
It's probably a CRT Hillian at the top there.
Yeah, actually, let's try this one real quick just to show people that. That's
Yeah, I mean with Pitfall art style again, it's like it doesn't look too bad there. Like you can kind of see like they
yeah.
might have gone for something like this. This also reminds me of like the cheap outsourced mobile game art style these days.
Yeah, basically. Actually, I want to load Battle Morph again with that filter on just to see how that looks. Super Soul Dwizzle wants to know if you ever wanted to give up or did you burn out during developing?
Like I definitely go through phases where like I feel less motivated to work on stuff. But that's also like so intertwined with my health problems. It's hard to say like how much of that I would experience otherwise. But no, I mean like generally if something is presenting an obstacle, that's when my brain really kicks in. It's like I'm gonna defeat this fucking thing, so
Mm.
I never go into give up mode. I definitely do go through lulls in productivity though.
Yeah, I'm similar in that I'm too stubborn to give up. I don't want to feel like I lost when I know I could probably do it. Like it's one of those things
Yeah.
where like if I lose because I lose, whether it's at a game or at a project, it's fine. I'm trying my best. Not everybody wins at everything. I don't have an ego like that. But if I know I could do it and I'm just frustrated, I gotta just like I'll step off for a while, but I'll give it a try. Same thing with guitar too. And it's stuff that I haven't played guitar in over a year, but when I used to be a guitarist, if it's something that I know I could do, then I'm gonna stick with it. But especially if it's something that I really want to do, but If it's just guitar
Yeah.
acrobatics, it's like I don't even know if I can do this, and I don't give a shit. So I'm just not going
I
to.
think, I think that's kind of the groove we all have to settle into because when you start at something, even if you've got pretty good natural talent for it, in relative terms, you suck at it. So
Yeah.
you got to be used to like trying real hard to overcome things from the get go, or you're not going to get too far and you're given discipline. So it's like once you get far enough in, you've already got the mindset of you know having to bang your head against the wall a lot to get over things.
Yeah. I appreciate all your health updates on Patreon, and I don't want to make you rehash that. And I also appreciate that you do it because now you don't have to just repeat everything to all your friends over and over. So, but do you want to give like
Yeah.
a basic update for people, or for maybe anybody in the chat that might not even know what you've been going through? Because I'll tell
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
whenever a family member gets sick, or whenever I get to deal with something, the hardest part for me isn't the taking care of a sick family member or going through it. It's the everybody that's concerned wants me to tell them the whole story. And but they're doing it from such a wonderful place, right? But I just want to
Yeah.
tell them
Yeah.
to shut the fuck up and let me be sick, or let my family member be sick. But I don't, because I know they just mean it with the best intentions. So I don't want to do that
Yeah.
to you
Like.
today. But so maybe the short version, unless it's something you want to talk about.
Yeah, no, like I really don't mind. Like I still like when strangers ask me stuff, I still like feel touched by it because it's nice to know that like there are people out there that give a shit. But I definitely also get what you're saying. Like it actually is worse, I think, when like a lot of different friends are asking because then you need to give them the real detailed updates and they have a lot of questions and they have suggestions. Oh well, why don't you try this? And so you have to have like 10 conversations like that. That
Ugh.
gets a little tasking.
Have
But
you
when you're just
tried
like,
ground echinacea root combined with cinnamon for cancer? Choke on it.
yes,
Like fuck off.
don't don't forget your stinging nettle teas. Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, but yeah, but I don't mind just like dumping it out there. Like that's different than having to like do a back and forth feedback and go over. Yes, I've tried this. Yes, I've tried that. All the different like dynamics that you get into when you're answering that question personally. But if you're just like answering it publicly like this, I'm like, that's not no trouble. So,
Yeah.
so basically, the situation that I'm in at this point is I spent like a week in the hospital back in June, and that was marked by all of a sudden like widespread organ inflammation. And so basically like my pancreas was super angry and inflamed. I had like a week of pancreatitis combined with liver inflammation. My heart was having trouble, and the heart still is having trouble. And the damn thing ended up stopping for like 10, 15 seconds one of those nights in the hospital.
Oh.
I just like, I literally like it. And from my perspective, I fall asleep. I wake up, there's like a bunch of nurses panicked, just being like, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Whitehouse. And I like wake up, like, what the hell's going on? And like, your heart stopped. I'm like, oh, really? That sucks. Like,
What?
and so like
Did you notice it all? Like, was it something that you came out of it and like you remember something different, or was it just was nothing? Was you didn't even
no,
know?
like to me it's just like just waking up from sleep. Like I don't remember like having any dreams, which is pretty normal for me. I usually don't remember dreaming. Every once in a while I'll get like a real fucked up vivid dream, but for the most part I don't remember them. So from my perspective, I'm just like being waken up by a nurse shaking me and shouting my name for some reason. Like
Jeez.
no feeling or knowledge that my heart had stopped. But so they checked the hardware, made sure everything was working properly, that I couldn't have been laying on anything like yeah, and to that point, I've been having like pretty intense bradycardia, which basically is like your heart um, beats really slow at resting, and I'm still having that. Like my resting heart rate will go down to like 40 every once in a while, and then it'll suddenly like shoot way up on the other side, and tachycardia it'll get up to like 120 resting. No psychological or like anxiety based or physically based reason for this to be happening. It's just happening. And I've been to the cardiologist. They couldn't figure out what was going on with it. Um, like they did the usual what's it called? Not electrodes, like the cardiogram, echocardiogram, where they image the heart and make sure they can't find any structural anomalies or anything like that. So all their tests looked good. They put me on like the heart monitor for a month, and certainly like they could see, yeah, your heart rate's like going all over the place. But doing the EKG when that's happening, not seeing any like indications of actual cardiac events. And so looking at all this stuff in retrospect, with what I'm seeing happening now, I really think there's a good chance that I've got something fucked up with my pituitary gland driving all these behaviors. And the reason that I really think that now is after that week in the hospital, I started also having more increased rates of pancreatitis. And then a couple months ago now, all of a sudden, in one of my labs, my TSH shot way up. And TSH is thyroid stimulating hormones. And basically, because I don't have a thyroid, I'm taking synthetic thyroid drugs every day, levothyroxine, and they've been adjusting the levothyroxine to basically try to keep the TSH down because with the type of cancer that I had, um, the TSH goes up. You can never get rid of all the thyroid cells in the body. Like they give me radioactive iodine treatments. They've tried to kill as much as they can, but the radioactive iodine uptake is never quite zero, which means you've still got some cells floating around in there, might be cancerous. And so the idea is you don't want to have a high TSH level because TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, stimulates those cells, potentially causes them to, kick into action, replicates, be cancery, bad things. And so they really want to keep that TSH down. And they've been having a hard time doing that for me. And so they've had to keep bumping my levothyroxine up because the idea is if your levothyroxine or your T4, T4 is your actual like thyroid hormone that the levothyroxine is, replacing. And so my T4 is already way too high. So I'm basically experiencing symptoms of hyperthyroidism, even though I don't have a thyroid. And the reason it's way too high is because they're trying to keep it high to drive down the TSH. And so I've been kind of complaining about that, but I've been like doing what they tell me to do because I'm like, yeah, like I'm definitely like feeling it like when the TSH or when the T4 is too high, like I do start having these very evident hyperthyroidism symptoms. And so I've basically been playing ball with them and just enduring, the hyperthyroid stuff, which I think definitely does make the tachycardia side of things worse. But a couple of months ago, all of a sudden, like the TSH is below 1, which is where they want it, shot up to 9 in one of my labs, and this coincided with all kinds of like different crazy symptoms that I started having, just like these weird psychological symptoms of just like baseless anxiety and doom, and this constant like profuse, like thick, heavy sweat I've been having, along with like these weird like intensified joint pains, um, my thickening of skin, which is a really weird one. That didn't initially register me because I'm like sending out there commenting to my ex-wife about like, yeah, I'm looking at my hand. It's like it looks like I'm wearing a leather glove. Like, what is happening here? And she's like, yeah, that looks really weird. And the past couple months, I've gone to get blood drawn, and they've had trouble drawing my blood. And the two phlebotomists now have said that's because your skin is really thick. Is it? Like, that's never been a problem. Nobody's ever said that before. And so, like, all these symptoms are like coinciding with my TSH shooting through the roof. And my endocrinologist is the one that should be responsible for like recognizing and diagnosing that. So I went to her and I'm like, hey, I know we've got this appointment in November. I really want to move it up or get you to do like some labs before then, because it really like with my TSH shooting up, and I should mention the pituitary gland is solely responsible for regulating TSH. So when you got no thyroid and your T4 is already way too high, and your pituitary gland is still spitting out tons of stimulating hormone anyway, that indicates there's definitely something wrong with the pituitary gland. Like there's no really debate about that as far as I can tell. I'm not a doctor, but in all my research, it's like, yeah, there's definitely got to be like pituitary involvement. Well, it doesn't mean there's like a tumor or anything necessarily. It could be like there's lots of autoimmune diseases that attack the pituitary gland and cause it to, malfunction in various ways. Could be something like that. But I have been fighting this woman and and trying to get her to just order labs to check out, other hormone levels that are affected by the pituitary gland. Pretty basic initial diagnostic step. And she wouldn't do it. And she's telling me like all these symptoms that I'm relaying to her are not, couldn't be related to the pituitary gland. And I've been looking at like, a Mayo Clinic article on pituitary tumors and other pituitary problems, and I'm seeing these things that I'm experiencing very clearly, very clearly stated. And so the thicker skin is the one that we ended up having a big argument about, because she told me, and I recorded this because it was a teledoc thing. And believe me, if I end up having a pituitary tumor or something, she's going to court. But I
Jeez.
recorded her basically like talking down to me and saying, no, I've never heard. And she explains to me the whole mechanism that I'm very familiar with. Okay, if you have a pituitary tumor, you might have no symptoms at all, or it could cause various, dysregulations of these various hormones that the pituitary gland is responsible for regulating. Um, and she says that, and there's no mechanism by which that I'm aware of that the pituitary could result in thicker skin. And I'm like, really? Because that's a very basic thing that's like listed on this Mayo Clinic article. It's listed in all the reading materials. And this is something that, as an endocrinologist, she should have very firmly in her wheelhouse. She should be very confident about her knowledge there, which she is, but she's lacking the knowledge to be confident about.
Yeah.
So basically, she told me off, and she's like, "Yeah, no, there's no way. Like thicker skin couldn't be pituitary." And it's like, dude, like I consulted with a couple of friends who, one of them is a doctor, the other one knows a doctor, who both confirmed, yeah, you're absolutely right, and she absolutely should have known this. Like, there's no way an endocrinologist shouldn't know this, much less like be talking down to you about it and like telling you that there's no way your symptom is related to the pituitary gland when it, is pretty much like the only thing it would be related to. And so like that's kind of where I am in terms of like trying to
Uh,
diagnose whatever's going wrong, because something definitely clicked a couple months ago and things started going really wrong, and I've been having like pancreatitis once or twice a week now, acute pancreatitis, because I'm moved into the round of like I have these bouts of acute pancreatitis where when they've actually checked my lipase count during these bouts, they're like, 6,000, 12,000 plus, this crazy amounts of, pancreatic enzymes floating around in my blood because my pancreas is shredding itself inside of me, or something shredding my pancreas inside of me. Nobody can seem to figure out what. But I've gotten to the point where even when the acute bouts are happening, it's chronic. So I've got a constantly slightly elevated lipase count, and most of the time I'm getting some degree of pain in that pancreas area. And so all that stuff has gotten so much worse, coinciding with the TSH evidently shooting up in the lab. So I'm pretty confident that there's going to be some kind of pituitary involvement here. Whether I wouldn't say that I like have any real confidence that it's a tumor based on the symptoms, it could be, but I think it also is very likely to be I've got some kind of autoimmune disorder that is resulting in my immune system attacking the pituitary and having the resulting hormonal imbalances. So, but unfortunately, like I'm doing way more doctoring than I feel like I want to or should be, because my doctor's like, and I have to sanity check myself on this all the time because I feel like I might be going crazy. Like to encounter so much incompetence in the medical fields is genuinely shocking, and like I have to
yeah.
really like pass it by friends and stuff constantly and be like, hey, I'm not crazy, right? Like this person is really bad at their job, right? And I'm like, yeah, no, you're not crazy.
I've met doctors that were so amazing and changed people's lives for the better and saved people's lives, but I've also a lot met doctors exactly like the one you're talking about, and
Yeah,
it's enraging. It
yeah,
just it sucks.
but yeah,
And
like
our
I've also
insurance is another big thing too. It's not like you could just say, "All right, well, I'm going to go to another doctor." You might have to get another
yeah.
referral, and you have to make sure your insurance covers it. And you have like, there's a lot. There's a lot that you have to do in order to get all that shit done.
Yeah, and that's kind of my theory of like why I'm encountering so many terrible doctors seemingly across these different specialties. Is like I've got, the Arizona State Medicare basically, access Arizona cost containment system or something like that. I think it's healthcare cost containment system. But basically, it's like the insurance that you get as a poor person,
Yeah.
which initially I was only eligible because I was like doing contracting. I slipped through some loopholes to make be eligible in in a period where I hadn't had any income in 3 months. And then when you like renew, there various things you can do to kind of like, and mind you, I'm very upfront with the department about my income, and I'm like, hey, initially I was like, hey, I made six figures this year, but I haven't had any income for the last few months, and so they basically told me, yeah, you're gonna have to get on Access, as opposed to even buying a marketplace plan, because that's just what they apparently how they funnel people when they fall into these income categories, which is really dumb when somebody is like making good income. At this point, I'm not like making six figures anymore, so it's fine.
Yeah.
But but anyway, so I've been on this insurance for a while, and it's definitely like it's great. Um, and when it does cover stuff, it usually covers 100%. So
Oh,
if you're having like a really expensive procedure that it does cover, it can save you from going bankrupt, which is awesome. The downside of it is you have to like fight them tooth and nail to get them to approve anything. Like they're so much worse than any of the private insurance companies that I've been under in my life in that regard. And the care providers that will accept this insurance are pretty much bottom of the barrel. Like nobody wants to say that, and doctors definitely don't want to acknowledge it, but it's absolutely true.
yeah.
So, but yeah, that's kind of my theory of like why I'm getting all these really bad doctors. Is just like these are the people that were at the bottom of their medical class, and this is where they have to be. So,
That's probably a very good guess. As horrible as that is to say, that's you probably nailed it with that one. Because
yeah,
I dealt with that my childhood. We were the poor people on this, state meds, same thing, and like, yeah. I mean, I just everything you just described really hit home, unfortunately.
yeah,
Now imagine you're a hardworking doctor that's trying their best, and you're working extra hours, and you're helping people out where you can, and you hear stories like yours, where somebody's
yeah.
just half-assing it, letting you suffer. That must be. It's like a really good police officer watching video of a shit cop doing something awful. It's like, you're ruining it for everybody. We're not all like that.
Yeah, yeah, I can, and I mean, like, I've definitely like come across doctors that seem like really competent and interested, but like, they're never in a position to be able to help me. Like, I had a pathologist who like asked so many questions and had so many suggestions about like what my disorders could be, and he was so much more proactive than any of my actual doctors that have ever been. And I told the guy, I'm like, hey, is there any way you could be my doctor? And he's like, unfortunately not. I'm like, God damn, like. I
Uh,
wish I could have somebody like you actually overseeing like my case. That would be awesome. But
yeah. Uh, Well, so it looks
yeah,
like your future projects are aiming towards PlayStation, and you had mentioned PlayStation 2 as well. The last time I
yeah,
looked into PlayStation 2 software emulation, it was very good and impressive, but it was also a little convoluted at the same time, and not nearly as easy of an
yeah.
experience as we saw with Big Pimu here. So, is that something that you were planning on doing at some point? Have you even looked into that, or is it just one of those like, yeah, I'd like to do that too?
Yeah, no. So I've got some pretty intimate familiarity with the PS2 hardware. I've done a whole lot of reverse engineering on it. Written like little various emulators of different components in the system. Done a whole just like a whole lot of debugging on the system, even though I haven't written software for it. And so I've got a pretty good understanding of the architecture and a pretty good picture in my mind of how I would go about emulating that system in a way that is very performance, basically. And that's the main reason I want to tackle it. Is just like PCX2 is in a pretty great state, um, but it has very high system requirements. It's got a lot of kind of I don't know how to put it in a way that's I don't want to be insulting or anything, but it's got a lot of cruft in it, which is kind of the natural result of having a project that is at large that's been worked on by that many people. over such a long period of time. And so like I kind of would like to just do my own from scratch take on PS2 emulation, which mind you is an incredible amount of just sheer labor
Yeah.
because the GS alone is a very complex piece of hardware. You've got a lot of different intricate communication between components, a lot of complicated DMA work that needs to be emulated, and just sheer processing power of the main CPU. Definitely have to tackle that with probably in the PC world some kind of just-in-time solution. And I one of my focuses though is going to be on
I'm
kind
sorry,
of
this game is so bad. I'm sorry to interrupt. If you played this one yet? Oh my
it's awful.
god. Oh,
It's it's like if you make the blitter free on this one, it speeds it up and it can feel a little bit more playable, but it's in other ways it's like even more jittery and screwed up. So it's just like
yeah, I gotta skip
this
this one.
one. It's
Please
hard to
continue
rescue
with
that
your
one.
PlayStation 2 stuff, though. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop laughing. I was trying to stifle my laughter, and then I had to just let it out.
Yeah. But yeah. So where was I? So basically, like it's it's a it's a very complex piece of hardware to emulate, and I think like my take on it would also focus a lot on like tools and automation for ahead of time recompilation for which you can never fully automate that stuff on a console on a platform like the PS2 because there are so many potential sources for executable code or runtime to be introduced. But you can do a lot, and kind of my plan there is to have this framework that makes it very viable to sort of port slash emulate PS2 games to low powered consoles in a very automated way,
Mm,
with the hope that publishers would take me up on licensing that to re-release, republish some of these old PS2 titles that have proven to be kind of a sinkhole for them to pay to get ported because a lot of
yeah.
those PS2 games are very esoteric and very crafted around the PS2 hardware. And I've seen more than once porting house sign up to port one of these things, and they just they end up below water, and the publisher cancels the whole thing because they run into so many technical problems that they can't solve on a reasonable timeline. So my hope is that like in developing the simulator, that can be kind of a side goal. And if I do, like honestly, like given my health state, I'm a little pessimistic that I will get to the point of finishing the PS2 emulator enough to release it in whatever time I've got left. Not again. I try to keep an open mind because I don't actually know exactly what is wrong with me. Um, but if I do get to that point, that's kind of the side goal is to like have something that both facilitates PS2 emulation really efficiently and performantly and works even on relatively low spec systems while still being very compatible and accurate, but also have that potential goal of being able to use it commercially to facilitate publishing re-releases, remasters, enhancements, and so on of PS2 games, which I figure we should be, about to hit the nostalgia window with kids that grew up on PS2 games that are now discovering that life is terrible and they just want to go back and play PS2 games again.
Well, the other big deal with PS2 is how the majority of the library is 480i, which isn't really the case on any other console. So emulating those, or even playing those on real hardware, I mean, you get stuff like the Tink 4K. It's amazing, but it's still interlaced video. It's not a that's not a magic wand. That's just a really good video processor. So you're never gonna look.
Yeah,
It's never gonna look as good as if it could be native rendered in 480p, which is something that's
yeah,
not easy, but could certainly be done a lot easier in software emulation.
definitely.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to
And
the
then there's
checkered flag before we ended this, just to show everybody who's joining us towards the end the amazing stuff that you're able to do with this emulator. Anybody that's ever played checkered flag before is probably laughing right now just at the fact that I'm able to finish a couple of laps with the steering the way it is, and I didn't even enable analog controls. Like but it's not just the graphics. Like you really hacked the hell out of this one. Thank you.
yeah. It was a pleasure. Like I do really love taking a game that's like you can see the game inside it could be playable or even fun, but it's just hampered by so many things. I love taking a game like that and like just bringing the game up out of the mire.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, man. I know, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, and I just wanted to show off your emulator for people. We did the interview a couple years back, and that was a blast and everything. But I talk about all of the major updates that you post, but I don't really get a chance to show people what it could do. And yeah, sure, we mocked a lot of the terrible games that are on Jaguar, but I mean, we're ending it with just the perfect description. I'm playing Checkered Flag at 30 frames per second, and it looks great. It's rendered at a higher resolution, but I'm actually playing it. So, this is awesome, and it's free. And it's, if you want to help support Rich and all of the awesome stuff that he does, the Patreon links in the description. But if you're not in a position to support, you could just download it. It's right there. So, thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Getting the word out there. Initially, I got a whole bunch of upfront support on the Patreon, which was awesome, and it's provided a ton of support, especially going through all these medical problems. That income has ended up being really meaningful, and so it's kind of the inevitability of these things as you continue working on something and it gets less publicity over time. Your Patreon numbers start to fall off, and so I really appreciate you coming along and giving me a little bit of a boost, reinvigoration, and the continued coverage of it also helps a huge amount. So
yeah, it's
really
my
appreciate
pleasure. But I mean, to be blunt, if it sucked, I would never talk about it. So this is all a reflection of the great work that you do. So I'm always happy to promote any awesome people, awesome product, awesome software, whatever. I'm in. So thank you.
Thank you, man.
Well, I think this was an awesome stream. I really enjoyed the hell out of it, and yeah, thanks to everybody. Thanks to the super chats. Thanks to everybody who joined, and as always, just check the links, and we'll for more
Oh,
info
and
on all the stuff. Yep.
I should mention before we go, the thing the iOS port should be coming out pretty soon here. It actually is in review right now. Apple rejected it yesterday morning for the first time because they are upset that I'm showing screenshots of games on the store page that cannot be accessed within the emulator. So I replied to that. I said, well, look at all these other emulators on the store, like Delta, for example, showing screenshots of games that don't come with this emulator. How is this any different? And so that's kind of the path I'm on, getting the thing improved with Apple right now. So who knows when it will actually be out, but assuming Apple doesn't, have this things too much more at this point, it should be out pretty soon. And I am thinking I'm probably going to put that up on the store for like $10 initially,
Mm-hmm.
because it's cost me like a good $1,000-$1,500 or so just in hardware and um Apple's nonsense developer subscriptions and the stuff they put me through with the botching my accounts. Like there's a whole side story of that I'm not going to get into. But anyway, put a lot into making this thing. So I figured I'll try to make some money back on selling it. I honestly don't anticipate it's going to sell enough even to make that money back, but I'm gonna give it a shot. So if iOS Jaguar emulation does interest anybody, and they want to give me $10 through that venue, mind you, Apple will take their pound of flesh. That would still be great. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I will be covering all of that stuff as well, and yeah, I can't see myself playing a lot of Jaguar on my phone, but I'm gonna give it a try because I'm a nerd that loves this shit. So thank you again, Rich. I really appreciate it, and I'll be covering that when it comes out too.
All right, cool, man. I appreciate it.
All right, take care, everybody.